like you, know that keeping Washington, D.C. safe is the first job of the mayor. And ensuring the safety and well-being of our 681,000 residents continues to be my top priority. And in those 2 years, we have come a long way in making Washington, D.C. safer and stronger, with total crime being down in our city by 9%. Let's hear it for the Metropolitan area. In 2016 alone, we saw a decrease of all violent crime by 10%, total homicides down by 17%, and a reduction in robberies by 13%. And just yesterday, we were over in Engine 30 in Ward 7, where I was proud to highlight the advancements we've made in our Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department, and I want to thank Chief Dean and all the men and women of DC Fire and EMS. Give them a big round. So without a doubt, Washington, D.C. is safer today than it was 2 years ago, and going forward, we will not let our foot off the gas. So today, we're here to talk about how we build on that progress. Just a few months ago, we were together to celebrate and congratulate Chief Kathy Lanier as she retired and moved on to a fantastic opportunity. I knew then that we needed to find someone who knows our community, someone who our officers and residents can rely on and who they trust. And most importantly, we needed to find a chief of police who understands and believes in community policing. In Washington, D.C., we know that public safety doesn't just happen. The advancements we've seen with our police department didn't happen by accident either. It takes sustained, coordinated effort from the community to yield these results. So we know that policing is not something that MPD does to the community, but it is something that we all do with the community. And so whoever leads our police department needs to truly believe and understand this philosophy like I do. As interim chief, Peter Newsham has been reliable and consistent. Last month, Chief Newsham oversaw the very successful presidential inauguration as well as the Women's March on Washington. Like so many Washingtonians, and indeed people from around the nation and the world, have sent me postcards and notes thanking me for the wonderful welcome they received here in Washington, D.C. They were proud of our police department and our officers. With the eyes of the world on us, our officers stepped up to the plate and performed. They kept Washington, D.C. safe, they kept our businesses protected, and they ensured that over 1 million people could exercise their First Amendment rights. And since taking over as interim chief, Peter has proven that he is committed to transparency and being available to his officers and the members of the public. He has already implemented reforms that have made him more accessible to the community. He oversaw the full deployment of body-worn cameras, and he transitioned the department to a sector policing model. In dealing with sensitive issues like police-involved shootings, Chief Newsham has always shown a commitment to getting information out to the community quickly and responsibly. And throughout it all, Chief Newsham has worked to ensure that during uncertain times, Washingtonians know that the Metropolitan Police Department is here to help all Washingtonians. In short, Chief Newsham has shown that he truly values and respects the residents of Washington, D.C., and at the end of the day, that he is the best person to be the best police chief for the best city in the world. So today, I'm proud to announce that with the council's approval, and I want to thank Chairman Bill Mendelson for his leadership over many years in the area of public safety, his leadership of the council, and I want to acknowledge and greet the chairman of the council. Give him a big round of applause. And I want to, and after I make my second announcement, we will take some questions from you. But it brings me great pleasure to announce my appointment of Peter Newsham as the next Chief of Police.
role in public service, especially one in the chief of police position, there will be some people that will say some unfair and negative things about you, and the people who suffer the most through that are your family. And my wife is here, and I want to give her a round of applause for dealing with those things. Another group that's here, and I wouldn't be standing here without them, is all the folks, our sworn and civilian folks, and many of them have showed up here today, and that's really why the Metropolitan Police Department is as good as we are. It's because of the men and women who work for this agency. So could we please give them another round of applause? I am truly honored and humbled that Mayor Bowser selected me. This is a coveted position in policing, and I am certain that the folks that I competed against were some of the very best that law enforcement has to offer in this country. As the interim chief, it has truly been a pleasure to work closely with the city's chief executive, Mayor Bowser, and know that first of all, she really cares, but also that she really understands crime. She understands that there is more to preventing crime than just the police, and she has engaged every agency in the city to assist in reducing crime and making people feel safe. That's why I think DC, unlike some other cities, has had such success under Mayor Bowser's leadership in tackling and reducing crime. An important concept that I completely understand as the chief of police is that although we have had success in driving down violent crime in the city, one violent crime is one crime too many, especially when it happens in your neighborhood. So how do we continue to drive crime out of our community and make people feel safe? I believe there are two principles that our agency needs to continue to focus on and be committed to. The first is trust. Trust is the cornerstone of American policing. The way you establish trust is through community policing. And so you might ask, Chief Newsham, what's your definition of community policing? Community policing is very simple. It's a philosophy that needs to be instilled in every single officer. The philosophy is that we, the police, are here to help. When you call us, we're not going to ask your race, your religion, your age, your sexual orientation. When you call us, we will always come, and when we come, we're coming to help. In every interaction we have with the community, whether you're a resident, a visitor, a person with mental health issues, a person who struggles with substance abuse, an arrestee, a returning citizen, MPD will be empathetic to your concerns, and we will always treat you with respect. That's how you build trust, and that's my definition of community policing. The second principle is in the last 2 years, there's been a lot of negative things said about law enforcement. And there's been some very high-profile incidents that probably justified some of those concerns. But by and large, the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department are out here helping people every single day. 2 days ago, we saw where 3 of our officers saved a man from a burning car. Just yesterday, our officers kicked in a door to help a woman who was in medical distress inside her bathroom. Those are the things we need to focus on with our police officers. These are good people doing good things, and they need to be recognized for that. We need to inspire them and make them recognize that law enforcement is a noble profession. So what are the challenges for the new chief of police? Hiring and retention, of course. We are in a retirement bubble. We need to find ways to attract really good people to come work here for the Metropolitan Police Department and to retain the good people that we do have. We have an aging command staff, which means many of the folks experienced and seasoned. But because they are so experienced, they will be leaving us soon, and that's the natural course in an agency our size. Really good and talented people will leave, but you need to make sure that you have talented people to take their place, and that's through mentoring and training and doing things like we did when we rolled out the sector concept. We are hiring a lot of new police officers. We need to make sure that we instill in those police officers our philosophy as to what the police are and how we police here in Washington, D.C. With regards to training and use of force, we need to make sure that our officers are properly trained and equipped to handle those situations, because in law enforcement, those situations do occur. We need to make sure that we have the best practices and the best training when it comes to implicit bias and cultural competency. And then also we need to focus on our technology. We are in a very good shape on the Metropolitan Police Department with regards to the technology that we do have. But to stay ahead of technology, that you need to be constantly focused on making sure that you remain state of the art. So those are the challenges that I see. If you want me to sum up what the Chief of Police will be in one sentence, as the Chief of Police, our team at MPD will be committed to unbiased, fair, and constitutional policing, and everyone will know it, not just because we say it, but because we do it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Newsham. And I am also happy today to talk about another part of our criminal justice system, the reforms that we've been working on and continue to seek, and giving people a second chance for everyone who is willing to work hard for it. In November, I chose Quincy Booth to serve as the interim director of the DC Department of Corrections, because he agrees with those values and he exemplifies them in all the work that he does. Quincy is a strong manager with over a decade of experience in DC government and varied experience in our criminal justice system. I trusted him to oversee the return of the DC Correctional Facility, or the Correctional Treatment Facility, I should say, to DC government control. And we just did that on February the 1st. So what that means is, for the first time in 20 years, that DC government employees have control to support and provide services to the inmates, all of the inmates at the DC jail. And that is a critical DC value that we've been able to implement. Quincy knows DC well, and he knows the ins and outs of our public and justice systems. Over the past few weeks, I've decided that there is no one better positioned to lead the Department of Corrections and continue to oversee the newly acquired Correctional Treatment Facility. So today, it is my great honor to announce that I am appointing Quincy Booth to be the Director of the Department of Corrections.
Good morning, everyone. I want to say thank you, Madam Mayor, for your trust, your commitment to the Department of Corrections. This was pretty much a seamless transition in the sense of, when the former director left, he would always sing your praise and talk about how committed you are around public safety, but in particular, a community that's often forgot about, which is the Department of Corrections. I had the pleasure and opportunity to experience it one-on-one as it relates to your commitment, as well as your spirit of excellence to say, can we do a little more? And when you continue to say that, can we do a little bit more around our reentry work, around our mental and behavioral health, as well as around our commitment to families, I said this will be an interesting but cool and exciting dance, because someone that understands that, I want to be a part of that team. So I'm happy that I'm a part of your team, Madam Mayor. And in addition, I had the pleasure of working with 1,100 plus men and women. Some of them are here today from the Department of Corrections. They also make the job enjoyable. We have a hard task, but they serve with pride, professionalism, and passion for caring for some of the people who, as the mayor stated, need a second chance. As my mentor, Paul Quander, would say, they need a little love. And so we are here to love them through, to help them in the rehabilitation process. So our end goal is that they do not, and I repeat, do not come back to us. So the chief has stats, and we all have stats up here. Our number one stats is to reduce and, to some degree, eliminate our recidivism rate, because we don't want back into our care, into our custody. We want them to go back out into the community, being successful men and women and contributing to this great city that we all live in. And so I also want to thank Sergeant Rosser, who's also a member of the team as an employee, but also as a strong advocate for some of the goals and visions that we have. So thank you, Sergeant Rosser, for that. And I have some friends here, my friend Maya and some other people that are here. I want to thank my friends, and if my mother is watching back in Philly, I love you, Mom. And I said earlier before, thank you, if the former director, which I spoke with him last night about this, Director Faust, thank you for setting that strong foundation. Thank you to the executive team. And thank you to my mentor, who is no longer here, the former deputy mayor. And again, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my amazing teammates to the left and to the right of me. And thank you, Deputy Mayor.
To acknowledge Deputy Mayor Kevin Donahue and the Public Safety and Justice Cluster, all our team members who are behind me, who work each and every day to make sure we have a safe and strong city. And I also want to thank Kevin for leading a very robust search process for the Chief of Police, and Kevin is going to be answering specific questions about the search. So, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Yes, ma'am.
Could Kevin speak now about the search process for the selection of new police chiefs?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, and I'll go into it in some detail. So upon the departure of Chief Kathleen in September, Mayor Bowser did launch a nationwide search effort to identify the most talented and experienced candidates to fill the critical position. He ultimately got over 100 candidates, many of whom are leaders nationally in law enforcement, some from MPD, some who used to be at MPD, and some who are chiefs in other cities around the country. In December and January, my office hosted a series of small group discussions. We ultimately held about 6 or 7. They lasted 2, sometimes 3 hours with ANC commissioners, community leaders, local high school students to try to listen to what they think we need in a police department and what that would suggest about the qualities we should see in a new police chief. These small group discussions were followed by a community conversation on January 28th that the mayor held by phone and by Facebook Live, in which at least 2,600 residents listened in and participated in that. We also used that community conversation to launch an online survey and put in paper form surveys at DC rec centers, senior centers, and public libraries. In total, about 6,000 residents took the survey. More than 4,000 residents completed all questions of the survey. And the survey was designed to get a sense of what people's views of NPD is, what priorities they would have for the department over the next few years, and what qualities in a professional background and qualities of someone's personality and leadership style that we should seek. All of this helped then form the criteria that we used to take 100 applicants and narrow it down to about a dozen that we took through the interview process. During the initial round of interviews, we used some of the priorities identified in that engagement process to ask the candidates their views on critical issues in policing. There was a second round of interviews and a third round of interviews in which policymakers worked, as well as senior Bowser administration officials worked. The final round of interviews, that would be 4 rounds of interviews, which at this point was a smaller pool of people than the dozen that I started with the first round. We're able to spend a significant amount of time each with Mayor Bowser, which allowed her to have in-depth conversations on their respective visions and goals for the department.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Not to gang up and jump on the negative comments, but this Partnership for Civil Justice has suggested that the quote is, "You're a mass violator of civil rights." And they go back to this issue in Pershing Park from some time ago, and the city's $8 million in total settlement of those people who were rounded up. then there have been some questions. Obviously, some of the demonstrators during the inauguration day were violent and out of control, but there were also some apparent journalists who were swept up and arrested as well, and their charges were later dropped. Can you talk to us about what you've learned from those incidents and how you might deal with those in future protesters?
Sure. So before I turn to the chief, let me just say this. We take very seriously our responsibility as a city and our honor, really, to welcome people from around the world who want to exercise peaceful protest in our city. But we also take seriously the responsibility to protect DC residents and businesses and property. So the chief will talk to you a little bit about all the things that the department has learned since Pershing Park, but also about the activities around the inauguration and the Women's March. I think one thing that's critical to know about the inauguration is that we weren't talking about peaceful protests, but rioting. And that the chief of police exercised great judgment, got all the advice necessary, and acted accordingly. We expect that there will be people that have a different view, but I would tend to rely on our fellow Washingtonians who participated in a grand jury and sent down 214 indictments around rioting. So let me get the chief will offer his perspective around how the department has learned and grown.
And I don't think that's an unfair question. I think it's an excellent question. I think folks do really need to know the answer to that question. So for the arrests that occurred in Pershing Park, as you know, because it's been highly documented, I've been questioned at length publicly about what happened. My decision at the time was a decision that I thought was in the best interest of the District of Columbia and of public safety. My sense from what I had seen prior to that group entering the park was that potentially they could leave the park, continue to destroy property, and then maybe get into some interactions with the police where folks could get hurt. So that's why I made the decision. It was subsequently determined that that was not the right decision, and I have to make decisions in my line of business. But the Metropolitan Police Department learned a great deal from that experience that we've taken to today, and I think it was exhibited during the inauguration, where we had thousands of people who peacefully came to Washington, D.C. to exercise their First Amendment right, their grievance with the government, and we actually welcomed that as an agency, and that happened. And there was, like the mayor said, there was a small group of folks that came here with the intention of breaking the law, and during the course of those arrests, there was absolutely no intention to arrest anybody that was in the business of reporting. There was an attempt to identify folks who were in the business of reporting, and in fact, some folks who identified themselves as reporters were released. And I think that it's really important to remember all of that damage and destruction that they caused to our city was legitimate. 6 of our police officers were injured, and none of the arrestees were injured. One of our police officers was actually hit with a piece of metal which dented his helmet and knocked him unconscious. Another one of our police officers was pushed where he ended up spraining both of his ankles and has been out for several weeks recovering from that. So I think that the actions were appropriate under the circumstances. And then to top it all off, and I think this is more of an indication of how we are as a police department when it comes to demonstrations. If you looked at the Women's March the very next day, hundreds of thousands of people came to Washington, D.C. And successfully exercised their First Amendment rights. And like the mayor, I have received hundreds of emails and letters of thanks as to the way the members of the Metropolitan Police Department under this leadership behaved on that day. So that's what we're all about. That's what I intend to be all about as your police chief. So I hope that answers your question.